Okay, we are live. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Becky McRae from Oklahoma.
And I'm Deb Brown from Iowa. Welcome. Let's thank our partners, Becky.
Go ahead.
Missouri Community Betterment, Dakota Resources, Oklahoma State University Extension, Association of Washington Cities, North Dakota Department of Commerce Tourism Division, the Michigan Rural Council, the Iowa Small Business Development Centers, American Independent Business Alliance, known as AMIBA, Glenn Muskie Consulting, West Central Initiative of Minnesota, Tourism Currents, Startup Asotin and Startup Whitman, the Center for Rural Affairs, and let's not forget our cooperating groups. There's Oklahoma Main Street Communities. They earn quality assurance points just by participating. And Wisconsin's Economic Development Corp and University Extension, they help us get the word out.
We really appreciate every one of our partners that works with us to help make other people, other rural communities aware of the awesome things that we're offering. And I say they're awesome things that we're offering, not because we think we're awesome, but we do, but because these are exactly the things that you ask us for and that you tell us are very helpful for you. So we're excited to have folks that partner with us to help more people be aware of them and benefit from them. So quick shout out. We've got some good folks that are in the house with us today. So I know I saw that Paula Jensen from Dakota Resources is here, and Mark Benner, Lisa Clemens-Stott, Kendra Perry, Kara Williams, Jared Hybertson. Hello, Jared.
Hi,
and Jacqueline Fitzgerald. Okay, so hi, everybody, and we're glad you're here. If you want a shout out for your hometown, we did your names there, a quick name check of those of you that are in on time. If you want a shout out for your hometown, just throw that right in the chat box and we will shout out for you, because part of the reason we do a Q&A is to build community. So we'd love for you to get your names in there. Now, this that we'll talk about today, this will be our follow-up to the recorded session. You've all had an opportunity to view the recorded lesson, or if not, it's only 30 minutes. Feel free to rewatch just as soon as we're done here today, or anytime as long as you have access to it. And members, of course, have access for the whole time as long as you're a member. So if you're looking for the handout, that is going to be on the replay page where you find this video, where you found the recorded lesson. The link to that is in every email that you've received about this broadcast. So you've got it there. If you've got your questions, throw those in the chat box. If you've got stories or examples or ideas or other things you want to share, and even if they're a little bit off topic, we're happy to address those as well. We've got a lot of stuff that we've pulled together, more than enough to fill the hour, but we would rather fill the hour with your stuff. So feel free to put all of your stuff right there in the chat box. Shout out to Webster, South Dakota for Paula Jensen. All right. Okay. If you're watching this by replay and you're like, where's the chat box? Well, if you'll scroll all the way to the bottom of the page where you're watching this replay, there's a little box right there. That's the comment box. It comes by email to both Deb and I. We will answer you by email so that you be sure to get an answer to your question. So Deb, you want to start by reviewing? Oh, wait. Jacqueline Fitzgerald, Kenton, Ohio in the house.
Yay, Ohio. Hi, Jacqueline. Okay. Hi, everybody that's there. And yes, let's review the main idea. If you want more volunteers, you need less formal organization. Create the framework that lets the community build what the community wants. Remember your real goal. And your real goal is to build community. That's why you do your projects and events that you want volunteers for in the first place.
Okay, so let's talk about the idea-friendly behaviors. This was one of the main things that we talked about in that recorded lesson. So you can go back and view that recorded lesson for a view of the whole list of old way behaviors versus idea-friendly way behaviors. But we wanted to give you an example of how this looks. What does that look like when it actually happens in the real world? So when you actually put this into practice, what does it look like? So I want to start with a real letter that I got from an actual Chamber of Commerce. This came in the mail on paper, of course, and it says, the Chamber of Commerce is planning for our year's worth of programs. So they put the year in there. Please see attached and let us know which areas you are willing to serve on. Thank you for your support. Which, I mean, they said thank you. And I mean, this is kind of typical. This is the normal sort of way that chambers of commerce ask for volunteers. And we're kind of used to that. Here's the list, you get a pick. Like that was right, idea friendly, right? Maybe not. Okay, so what would that look like if it was actually, how could we remake that into an idea friendly message? So first of all, it might not even come on paper. It might come by a variety of methods. It might be posted on Facebook. You might Instagram live it. You might have it all over. You might send it directly to people in Messenger. You might do all kinds of things to get that message out in a different way. Plus, you could also send it on paper. That would be cool too. So the message, what would it look like? So here's a one that we kind of came up with, which would, are you working on a project or a business or an event or just an idea or experiment that would help us to make our town better? We, the chamber, are here to help you. We want to help you spread the word. We want to connect you with more resources, more people, and help you find what you need to make it happen. So please bring your project or your idea, reply back to us, add it to our Facebook group, and then others can join you. And thank you for everything that you do for our town. That is a lot more idea friendly. It's more about what people are doing to make the community a better place and less about, hey, we at the chamber are the center of the universe. And it's not just chamber, but it's all of us when we're trying to find volunteers. We're like, we're the center of the universe and you're here to support us. No, we're about supporting what's going on. Remember, what's the real goal? To build community. That's the real goal. So we do have an example. Megan Weiss sent this in by email, and I thought it was so sharp that I wanted to share it. She said, we have an event coming up in a couple of weeks that is a bit of a hybrid. We talked about those two ways to do events. You remember the tale of two concerts that we shared in the lesson where, you know, the one concert was created and then announced, and then the other concert was announced and then created together. So she said, our event is a bit of a hybrid. Traditional in the sense that there is one main contact person, which helps with the chaos, but we just have spaces marked out so that we know when we reach capacity. But it's really an anything goes type of day. We close the street in the downtown. We invite businesses and organizations and churches and residents, et cetera, that they can set up any kind of a booth. They just have to provide a family activity. That's it. We never know exactly what everyone has planned until we see it that day, but it works and it gets so much of the community involved. We'll end up with over 40 different entities participating in this year. And our downtown is only a block. So we are really squeezing them in. Advertising costs are minimal because everyone shares that they are coming. And I just love that. I thought that was a really great example from Megan of how this can really work in the real world.
You know, we received an email from Kara this morning, and I want to share this one too, because it's great. She says the challenge our community, which is Gettysburg, South Dakota, is we have some big projects, such as our hospital that is doing it the old way. But we do have success with our Gettysburg in Action Group, the GIA, which does bike-a-thons, 5K races, holiday events, craft shows, children plays and concerts, and they communicate via their cell phones and social media. So a couple of the gals are coordinators and they handle the money that is raised, but the group is so organized / unorganized. That's chaos. They're able to figure out who can handle what event and who needs to do what, whether it's a staff event or make brownies or talk to the newspaper, merchants for support, etc. Your webinar made me realize how GIA is getting it and should be the model for our other and older organizations. Becky, I know you have some comments about this.
I know. I just love this. This is a terrific example that there will be different groups in your community who will do things different ways. You'll still have somebody doing things the old way where it's, you know, centralized, they're in charge, they tell everyone what they have to do. And yet, if you look around, you might be surprised at people who are already doing things the new way. And so this becomes a model, a great example to share with people and go, wow, how could we implement some of that? How could we bring some of that informality, that unorganization to what we do so that we're turning loose everyone in town to make them part of it without them having to serve on the committee, meet requirements, be there all year, you know, all the things that push people away. How can we do away with some of that and implement some of these crazy ideas to be more idea friendly and let lots more people be involved. So, two great examples that have come to us by email. And so I'm really glad we were able to share those.
Absolutely. And you don't need a committee or an organization. There's a lady named Joyce Griffith in Eaton Rapids, Michigan, who really likes to quilt. She knew it was more fun to quilt with some other people, and she could have gone to City Hall and asked what to do to form a group. But instead, she held a one-woman show at the local library. Then she wrote an article for the paper about the show and mentioned there was a quilting group starting. She hung up a sign in the library too. 6 people showed up for that first session. There's now 21 members of the group. They quilt, they share ideas, they teach each other. And Joyce is 78 years old. Goes to show you don't have to be young and smartphone oriented to do things the idea friendly way.
Oh, see, and I want to comment on this one as well, because Joyce has this all worked out. She may be 78, but she knows what's going on. So she just wanted to get people together. So she used that one-woman show of being conspicuous, doing her thing in public. She wants to get quilters together. So she displayed quilts and used that as a way to gather her crowd to her. And then she said she hung up a sign that said, "We are forming a quilting organization." The quilting group was just like her, like, yeah. I'm forming a quilting group, so come on and join me. And I think that's perfect. You don't need to actually, nobody knows yet that it's just you. They'll figure out that there's more people. And besides which, she had 6 people show up to her first thing. So obviously it worked. So did her thing in public, could be conspicuous doing your thing in public, used that to gather her crowd, built connections by having people get together in the real world, and boom, they're off and running. So I just think that's terrific. I love that story. Joyce has really got it. Now, I think if you think about it, going back to one of the examples that we used in the lesson, which is you don't have to serve on the beautification committee all year round to be part of making the community a better place. You don't have to do that. You can just see the hashtag Clean Your Own Sidewalk Day on Instagram and then decide, I want to be part of that, and grab your broom. That's all it takes. You do not have to commit to that full year of doing things the formal way and reading reports and, oh my gosh, you didn't follow up on that. If it's just whoever wants to participate in Clean Your Own Sidewalk Day today, then that's awesome. And it just happens. And I think that's terrific. So we do have another example that we wanted to share. And that is more about the idea-friendly behaviors and how this relates to finding volunteers. So you have the list of the idea-friendly behaviors that you remember. So this is a story, another thing of what does it look like in actual practice? Because this part will be pretty familiar to you. We're going to start with the old way, and we're going to talk about what it's like to be a young volunteer in a town. So what is the young volunteers experience in kind of a regular old way sort of town? And this should sound familiar. I'm not kidding. I bet a bunch of you will recognize this. So when you want to make a difference in your existing local project and you're a young volunteer, you're going to be told that you have to earn your way up. You need to start at the bottom because that's the way all of us old people did it. So that's the way you as a younger volunteer are going to have to do it too. You are going to have to join the organization. You have to pay your dues and become a member. You're going to have to sign up for the committee so that you can be involved. And you're going to sit through 6 months of committee meetings. And that's even before we get near the event. We're just talking. There's a lot of talking at these meetings, right? You've been to them. So every new idea that you as a young volunteer bring up is going to be shot down because that's not how we do it. We do it this way. So all your ideas were shot down. And then you were assigned, as a young volunteer, you're assigned a very low level, very high supervised task, like you're going to be running a broom. This is going to be as little fun and as little responsibility as possible. And so when you show up for the day of the event to work that shift that's assigned to you, you're going to spend a lot of time. You're going to have to wait around for 30 minutes before anybody recognizes that you're there and tells you what you can do. And then they're going to tell you what you do. You're going to work your shift. You're going to be pushing a broom or cleaning up or something else that's no fun. And then you're going to get sent home because we don't need you now. And so you're going to hear later about how proud the committee is to have such outstanding young volunteers. And they're going to list you by name and say how awesome you are. And you're like, What was that? That was no fun. So, but a young volunteer in an idea-friendly town might be more like, you have a big idea, and so you gather your crowd and you talk about it. You do your one-woman show and you get people to come to you. And you find out as you start talking to those first 6 people that show up with you, you talk to them and you say, who do you know that has what we need? Who do you know who might be able to help fund this? So somebody knows somebody, or somebody knows who will help with that. Your connections are just going to keep building and keep building. And then you go out and do the small steps. You're going to share on social media what you're working on. Others are going to show up and help out. It's going to be awesome. The newspaper may even end up showing up because they heard what you were doing. And so then the whole community can brag on how awesome you young people are. So that's a whole different experience, but that's the difference when we change our behaviors to more idea friendly and open it up to the entire community.
Becky, we get questions other than just about the topic we're talking about. And I want to share one of those because I think we should do that more often. Yeah.
It's closely related as well.
Well, and we're building community. Jermaine had sent us an email and she asked, how do you use technology to communicate your gathering or your get together? And for us, for each webinar we do, we put up on our site Facebook post, Instagram post, and flyers that you can use to invite people to your watch party. And we tell you how to download them and how to use them. If you have an email newsletter, put the invites there as well. Don't forget to text people and even call those that you know are not online. In other words, Jermaine, we tell everybody. We tell everybody, as many people as we can, to talk about the watch parties.
Yeah, and it comes down to this. How do you use technology to communicate a gathering? Is you take all of the tools that you're comfortable using and you put that information on there repeatedly, as many times as you can, as many times as you can make yourself do it. Like at least 8 is a minimum number of times you should repeat that message on each channel. I'm not kidding. So if you're on Messenger, use Messenger. If you're on Facebook, use Facebook. If you're an Instagrammer, use Instagram. Do it over and over. Now, for the tools that you don't use, you're not a big Snapchatter or something, find someone in your group that, just ask people who uses Snapchat and can pass this along to their Snapchat network. So it's use every tool you're comfortable with and then ask everyone else what tools they're comfortable with and just blanket the world. That's how you use technology.
Absolutely. And, ask your kids, ask the young people, hey, would you share this on Snapchat? Who do you think might be interested? And let them do it.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I just want to point out now, for those of you that are here live, we're glad to have you. We are excited to have your participation. We want your questions. We want your comments, and we want your stories and examples. If anything we said made you think, oh, I know a story about that, or that reminds me of the time, then feel free to put those in the chat box, because you're here live. Then you have that advantage that you can get our immediate feedback. Now, if you're watching this as a recording, then of course, go to the bottom of the page. Same thing applies. Put your stories and examples in there. We'll be glad to reply to you by email. So this is for everyone. Now, especially about questions about finding volunteers, getting more people involved in your community. And the next thing that we're going to talk about here live, until we get your questions, is that we're going to talk about, Deb did an event lately called Rural That Works. And one thing they did is they gathered up some of people's challenges and solutions. I think it's directly relevant to the question of how do we get more people, a broader group of people involved in our community. Deb, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, for sure. This was a new event for Sarah and I, my co-partner on this. And we were both former chamber ED people and have branched out on our own. And we wanted to have an event that really focused on Rural That Works. It was designed specifically for small towns. So we talked about it a lot, online, offline, in interviews, everywhere we could. How did we get volunteers? Well, we built the excitement, and we really created a space for people to say, hey, I want to help. A couple of people came forward when they heard we were doing this and just wanted to be involved. 2 of our sponsors also came forward and said, hey, what can we do? They had ideas. And, I'm never one to turn down an idea. So we used them. Sarah asked the cheese guy's mother, remember we're in a small town, if she would help with the decorating. And she was amazing. Our event was as lovely as it was because of her and her experience in hosting small local gatherings. People invite her to help set up for weddings and that sort of thing because she's just got a brilliant eye and she loves to do it. So we were really happy to have her. The majority of our volunteers came to us for that's the point I really want to put out there, because we did create the excitement and we believed in what we were doing, and we created that space so that people could just come to us and say, hey, I like what you're doing. Is there something I can do to help?
Yeah. So tell us about, now, one of the things is you did a very non-traditional sort of event that you had everybody at the event contributing to the information that you were creating. And so one of the topics that came up was getting people to show up. And so why don't you share what people came up with as points under getting people to show up?
So I'll explain a little bit about that session. It was so much fun because we gathered in small groups with people we didn't know and solved challenges. So instead of a lecture standing up in front of everybody and telling them what to do, we didn't do that. We said, hey, what are your ideas? And here's some of the things that they came up with. For that particular finding volunteers, finding people, helping people to show up, was to communicate and utilize your social media ambassadors. One person doesn't have to do it all. You want to put in with the membership activities to help with it. Start building relationships and don't talk negatively about it. In fact, refuse to talk negatively about it. Less meetings, please. Use Facebook messaging, Google Docs, a wine party, and use action plans. That comes from the Main Street people. They're really good at putting action plans together, and smaller groups, task force. And then you get people to talk about it. And use unemployed people who need a second chance. Surprisingly, that came up. Well, maybe not so surprisingly. It's a way to reach out to people and let people take small steps and be a part of that curve that Becky talks about.
Yeah, so let's talk about that participation curve and how that relates to all those things that you just listed. So the participation curve, let's see if I can pull that up right quick in my list of graphs here. Here we go. So share screen, you guys can bear with me while I share my screen.
Thanks, Becky.
All right, it's on here somewhere. Share that screen right there. Okay, so this is that power law of participation. So there's always just a few people who are really high, they participate a lot. So they're at this top end of this graph. I think I can even, you'll see my mouse there. This is you and your other people who are super excited, and the next person after you is like not nearly as excited, but they're also part of it. And then it goes down from there. And then you have a whole bunch of people down here in the long tail. They're not very excited at all, but they're still with you. They're still interested in your idea. And it's a matter of giving them tasks that are the right size for how excited they are and what they're capable of doing. So it's a first step. We want to offer people things that match what they are doing. And we have a lot of contacts in the world, Deb and I. And so one of the people that we're in connection with is a woman named Miss Daisy. And if you've been around listening to us for a while, you've heard about Miss Daisy. Miss Daisy has some challenges with mobility. She's not out and running around a lot, but she is online and she is super positive. And this is exactly the person you're looking for. Who's that person? We all know the people who hang out online with all the negativity. We don't need them. We're not looking to bring them in. We're looking to bring in the people who hang out online but are super positive. Those are the people that we really want to connect with the most and have them share and amplify our story, because they reach people we don't. And they are the ones who are really good at sharing stories. So you want to tap into those folks. You have to actually look for them to find the ones in your community. And you want to actually reach out to them and say, we would love for you to help share this. There's lots of people that are online in your community and you don't even know about them, or you don't know them very well. And so you need to reach out so that you can connect with them. And this is part of what, your group came up with, was that using unemployed people, people who need a second chance, people who are not falling into that traditional established view of what a volunteer looks like. We're used to thinking, okay, our retired people do all the volunteering. There's only these few. Well, there's actually a lot of people in town that don't fit that model, but could be doing some things, especially if we break our jobs down into little bitty tasks. How could we break a job up so that it fit into that long tail and covered lots of people? So,
And listen to them when they're talking to you. It's all about building the relationships. Maybe somebody's not online, but they heard you're doing this event and they have an idea. They'd like to take a couple of posters to the town next door. But the reason that they come to you and ask that is because you're starting to build relationships. Get to know people. It's so important.
absolutely. So, Deb, you've got another example here.
I do. I was in Cold Spring, Minnesota a while ago, and I did a walking tour and talked about doing ninja moves.
Now, explain what you mean by ninja.
So ninja is a good example is we walked by an empty building that had lots of leaves and dirt in the doorway and the windows were dirty. So the ninja move would be just go clean it up. Yeah. Don't ask for permission. Don't get on the agenda. Just go over there and clean it up.
Yeah. So the ninja idea is to just be sneaky and go take care of things that need to be taken care of.
And just go do it. And you can do it for open businesses too. It doesn't have to just be empty buildings. And then anyway, I'll go on and I'll tell you what to do with those open businesses in a minute. I was in Cold Spring and I was having lunch at a local bar and grill and ran into a group of young people, 30 years old, somewhere in that range. And I was talking to them and I was explaining to them what it meant to be a ninja. And it's, show up and do something nice, basically. And in this case, it was cleaning up the street and doorways at a building. So the young woman that I was talking to said she'd love to do that. She's got a power washer. She's been itching to really use it. And then all the young people at the table got all excited and started talking about how they could get involved in it too. Just that quickly, people had ideas and wanted to do it. So it started with building connections by asking who has a power washer. Then the crowd began to gather and share ideas. And finally, they took the small step and began. So when you're doing this in a business that's already open, leave them a note. But don't let it be a nasty note. Have it be a nice note. Say something like, thank you for doing business in our community. We're glad you're here.
Yeah, that's the right note to leave, as opposed to we had to clean up your business for you. I was doing a walking tour in Ladd, Illinois, and we kind of ran into the same thing, which was we talked about, okay, so here's this building. There's actually apartments upstairs, and they had two little plastic flower pots, actually pretty good sized ones, and the flowers had died. And so they were basically empty. And so the first thought was, oh gosh, are people putting cigarette butts in there? No, they were actually clean. So, I said, just come over here and plant some flowers for them then. Like it'll be a while before they even notice, oh my gosh, look, somebody planted flowers. And everyone will assume everyone else did it. Meanwhile, you're the ninja and you took care of it. And so you're awesome.
And that was the guys I met at another event that told me, Becky, there's flowers all over town now.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Somebody got the idea and became a ninja.
They did. And then they started at City Hall too, man. Suddenly at City Hall, little plants of flowers showed up. I was like, awesome. So we continued our walking tour. We had just talked about, ninja, just come take care of it. Just do it. Don't complain about it. Just do it. And other people will be drawn to you as well. We continue our walking tour. We come around on the other side of the street. We get to the bank. I, climb up on their concrete flower planter and start talking about something else in front of the bank. And one woman sits down next to me and starts pulling weeds out of the bank's flowers. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is exactly what we want to see. We want to see people actually reach out and take that first step of, oh, I could do something about this. And it wouldn't be that hard, as we're all here to just pull some weeds for people, and this whole town is now like, they have flowers everywhere. I think it's awesome. So I want to go to another question, another conversation I had lately, which was I was talking with a group out of Washington State University. And they were they're with the Rural Community Design Initiative. And one of the questions asked was, how do we get more people involved? Well, everybody, all of you listening, you're experts on this now. Like, exactly how to answer them. But I'll tell you the three things. I kind of gave them a 3-point thing at the time and said, first of all, be conspicuous doing your thing in public. Part of what they are doing is coming up with new design ideas for how the built environment, the buildings, the sidewalks, the streetlights, everything around you, how that could be even better in a small community. And I said, wow, just be conspicuous, get out there and do those things. If you're not breaking ground yet, but you can use pop-ups, you can use cardboard, you can use duct tape, you can use all kinds of temporary ideas to show people what the different design ideas being considered would look like. And when you do that, you're going to, people just walking by, people driving by are going to be attracted to that conversation who would never come to a committee meeting. They'll never come to that big public information meeting you're holding, you know, come down to this windowless room and we'll talk about how the downtown should look. A certain group of people will come to that. Different people will walk by you on the sidewalk where you're duct taping and go, what are you doing? And they will take that conversation down to the bar or down to where they hang out, or they'll talk to their friends. And that's conversations that you want to kick off. So be conspicuous doing your thing in public. So I'd love to actually hear about that in the chat box. If you've ever been actually doing something great and people kind of wandered up to you and said, oh, what are you doing? Like, we'd love to hear your be conspicuous stories. So the chat box is open to you, or if you're watching the recording, just scroll down and share those with us. Okay, so the second thing I told them was to give everyone small but meaningful roles. We've just talked about that. That's that participation curve. We need to give people little bitty ways to get involved, because right now, only a few people think they're the ones that should be involved because they're going to do a lot of work. And other people think, well, I can't do a lot, so I'm not involved. You give them little bitty things. And the third thing I told them is the third part of the idea of friendly, which is take small steps. So give people to, don't start with like, we need to break ground on fixing the whole street. Start with your duct tape, start with cardboard cutouts, start with things that actually show what you're doing without having to invest millions in changing the built environment. Start with little bitty, tiny, temporary things you can do together right out there and be conspicuous in public. So those were the three answers I gave those folks. So now let's see here. I want to remind you, chat box is open. We're welcome your questions, your stories, and ideas. You guys are kind of a quiet group now that we've done the shout outs, but feel free. That's part of why we're here, is to address your thoughts as well. And I know some of you personally, and I know you're real smart, so you may have some stories or examples you'd like to share in the chat, and we welcome those. Deb, you've got a story of what happens when the chamber's not in charge.
Yeah, let me repeat that: when the chamber is not in charge. So RVTV is where the WHO TV sports guys show up to a small town in an RV, and they stay all day and all night, and they promote the Iowa State football game that comes that Saturday of that week. So they've been to our community several times. The first time they came, the chamber, we decided to throw a huge party around their visit. So we were working on having a party, but somebody wanted to have a chili cook-off. You know what we did, Becky? We told them to go for it. The only thing we ask is follow the state's food rules for cooking food outside. From that point on, they had volunteers just come out of the woodwork that wanted to help, give out samples. Some wanted to cook. Everybody had ideas, and I believe they used them all. It was so much fun to see what people were doing, what they really loved doing, and not having to be in control. Yes, the chaos was hysterical, but the volunteers made it all work for everyone. I think the fact that the chamber did a call out for things for people to do during RVTV and then let them do it made it so much more fun for all the volunteers. It was pretty awesome.
Okay, so we've got a couple of things in the chat box, and one is Melissa Waldner from Webster, South Dakota says, too busy taking notes, cannot throw in questions, but which is great. We're glad you're taking notes. That's terrific. Now, Kendra Perry threw this one in. I think it's really a good one, and I think it leads right into the story that Deb, you were already wanting to tell next. She says, I think this idea friendly and just do it way of doing things is happening a lot around my community and the surrounding communities. So that is great. That part is on. However, I think sometimes it's hard for people to connect to when they can be, when they can participate in these things. Like they may be new in the community, right? Or just figure somebody else handles that. Somebody else handles the flowers, for example. And then they kind of take it for granted. Absolutely true. This is true of all of us. We all take for granted that somebody else will do it, which is why we ninja everything. So then the people that are doing it, they get burned out. They feel unappreciated. So how can we help with this? We're letting current groups know there are people that would help them before they burn out, and help those people identify opportunities that they may be interested in. So there's a big thing here of being a lot more open about what small roles people can play. So rather than just only, okay, so we've got to take care of the flowers. So before you do, like post it online. All right, tomorrow is flower day. We'll all be downtown doing this. Come and join us, help us weed, whatever, you can join us by doing just this. So a little advance notice helps people know. And then by talking about it online, sharing it publicly, then you're letting people know that these things happen and that that you're open to them taking a small role. And I think this is the perfect lead in because Deb's got a great story about a new person in your community.
Right. I have a couple of good stories. Well, first of all, I met a new acupuncturist in my town just last week. And I asked him to join a group of us who are hanging lights downtown. I just asked him. And you know what? He said, yes. Sometimes it really is that simple. Just ask someone, and not the STP, the same 10 people, but someone new, and start building that relationship. Make a friend along the way.
I really like this, Deb. I want to stop right there. Stop before you get into your second story, because it required a mental shift of yours, Deb, that you had to start thinking that you're always thinking, oh, this person's new. And also thinking about, well, what could I invite them to be part of? So you have to rethink everything that's going on in your community and go, what could I invite new people to be a part of? Because we're just kind of, we take for granted. We are very busy. We have a lot going on. So it's a mental shift that we make. We change the way we're thinking of things as we're changing our behavior to be more open. Does that make sense?
Perfectly.
Okay. So going with your other story there, Deb. Sorry.
So a group of volunteers last week wrapped lights around the tree trunks for the holidays. So two of us, Kevin and I, personally posted on Facebook that we needed help wrapping trees at 1 o'clock on Saturday. The Chamber Facebook page, they created an event and they shared it with their list. And we did all of that promotion online, actually. And you know what? Tammy and her 2 children came, and it was Tammy's birthday. She thought it would be a great way to have some fun with her kids on her birthday. Jake, who's new to town, asked his employer if he could leave a little bit early to come down and help. And that employer practically yelled out, yes, of course. And he got to meet some new people in town. The mayor came with his 2 grown sons. Emily saw the post on Facebook. She was there. One of the Hispanic clothing stores came out and said, here's a ladder. You might want to use that, because we were using little tiny step stools. Lindsay and her daughter came too. Kevin sent a text to Rod and said, come down and help. So he did. And you know what? One of the store owners came out and said, I'll do the trees in front of my store. And he started doing his. What could have taken Kevin and I hours to do ended up being just an hour and a half of camaraderie, and the kids got to climb trees. It was wonderful.
Okay, so how did this happen? How did people decide that they should jump in and help? It's because the way you talked about that event online and to everyone, and the way you sent texts, everything about it screamed, we want you to be part of it. The traditional way that we do things, everything about it screams, this is ours, and you guys hands off. So we have to change the way we talk about everything. We have to change the way that we put things in front of people. So we have a couple of good things in the chat box that I want to get to. Deb, do you have anything else you wanted to say there on that?
No, that's fine. Let's see what people are talking about.
Okay. Before, I'm going to do the second one first, which is Mark Benner from Eloy is here. And he says,
hi, Mark.
A shout out to our ongoing tour of vacant buildings in downtown Eloy. 3 years ago, 11 vacant buildings. Since then, after partnering with the city, holding a tour every 6 months, love that, the doctor's office with urgent care opens in December. 2 buildings have been renovated for a parachute making operation. Great. And a community garden is up and running on a Main Street vacant lot. That's awesome. So that's Mark from the Eloy Chamber. Also, another vacant building was sold on Main Street and a restaurant is planned. All those buildings were vacant for over 15 years.
Wow, good work, Mark. I had the pleasure of visiting with Mark and seeing his town. So that's really exciting.
It's that tour of empty buildings. It works. And they're doing it every 6 months. And that's what a hugely entrenched problem. Buildings were empty for 15 years or more. And they've turned those around. They still have a lot of empties, but man, progress like that really draws people in. I love it. So, okay, so now we've got a more challenging question. It's one I really empathize with, which is, how do we handle, this is from Jacqueline Fitzgerald. She says, how do you handle all the social keyboard warriors? These are those people who are on all the, they have all these ideas, but they do not want to step up and help. Ooh, they would rather tell us how to do it and not attend anything and then be negative on social media. Now, the end of this, I want to reply to first, because the people who tell you how to do it, they don't show up to help, and then they're negative online. You thank them for their input and then you go on. They're not helping you. They were never going to help you. You cannot lose the people who were never yours. They will never help you. And so just like, you're going to write them off. When they come around with their input, you say, thank you for your input. And then that's it. You don't encourage it any further, right? Because the people who are never going to help you are never going to help you. So there's that. But then there's also the first part of this, which is those people who are on all the boards and they have all these ideas, but they don't actually want to step up to help. Deb, I think you have some ideas about this one.
I absolutely can solve that for you, because I had the same kind of problem when I was chamber director, and everybody would be, let's do this and let's do that. And I started asking them, or saying, that's a great idea. When are you going to start it? And they either got really quiet or they said, no, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, let's go to the next idea. So I just put them in charge. It was their idea. Let them go do their idea. Hold them accountable. They're sharing ideas and wanting you to do stuff. Maybe they just need a push from somebody to tell them to go do it.
Yeah.
It worked for me. And people stopped raising their hands willy-nilly, first of all. And some of the ideas were great and some weren't, but people were doing new things because they were put in charge. Said, go do your idea. Go have some fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it helped that kind of changed the behavior of your entire organization to say you were open to new ideas. And so everybody's like, well, you should do this and you should do that. And I hear this a lot. Like, people email me, I told the chamber what they should be doing. I told the city they should take care of it. I think that's something that Parks and Rec ought to do. Great. That doesn't count. Like, I told them does not count as actually doing it. It's ninja. You have to go start on it. So you can turn this around to people, just like Deb says, and say, great idea. What are you going to do? What do you need is also a good one. What do you need to do your idea? And if you aren't going to do it, then thanks so much. We appreciate your input. Go do your own thing.
That's right.
I'm kind of rough on these people because I'm so used to that old way mentality. We all are. We've all been beaten by these people who are like, well, you're not doing it the way I want it. Well, then come do it. Like, come on and do it.
You want to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got another thing. Jacqueline, we just fell out of our chair. We love the answer. See, we're a hardcore group here. We're just mean to people. We really are. Because those people who are so used to the way that things used to be done, they're used to everybody falling over themselves or, giving them attention for their negativity. And you're like, sorry, we don't have time for that because we're so busy doing all these amazing things and empowering everyone. And everyone has a small but meaningful role. And so, you can say, hey, clean your own sidewalk day is Friday. Like, do you have a broom? Do you need a broom? I'll loan you a broom. So we can totally turn this around on folks. So, all right, I think I'm caught up on the chat box. You're still welcome. Absolutely. We've got 17 minutes left. So get your ideas into the chat box, your discussion. As you can see, this is the most fun part, is when we make up these great answers, tell you our actual experiences, and people fall out of their chair. That's what we're here for. So
yeah, we love to hear those kind of responses. I want to talk about, though, I have an idea. All right, I want to share something that happened in Bennettsville, South Carolina, when I was there. They had hosted a newcomers meeting, and they had their realtors ask everybody that they sold houses to or rented to come to this meeting. And it was intended for them to ask the kind of questions from the county people, like, can I burn my garbage? Or from the mayor, how does parking work in this town? But what happened is they had their own ideas. They started talking about, we're from this little small town close to you, and we've already started. We're doing a clean the streets project because we got really tired of seeing dirty streets, and the town really can't afford to do it. So we're doing it. That blew me out of the water. because what that did was it shared with everybody else, oh, wow, you mean we can just do stuff? Right? And of course they can. You can clean your streets. In fact, one lady had me laughing so hard. She lived next door to an older woman, and she just went over there and started trimming her branches off and pruning the bushes and doing stuff with the flowers. And the lady came out and said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm making your yard look better." "Why?" She goes, "Well, nobody does that." She goes, "Well, I do." And the woman went back in the house. That was the end of that.
Yeah.
So people, when you do that kind of stuff, people are not going to say, "Stop doing that." It's just not what you're going to hear.
Yeah. We talked about, people kind of are waiting for permission. And, the woman that's pulling weeds out of the bank's flowers, like, I promise you, the bank president is not going to come out and go, "Quit pulling weeds for us." We don't want you to be part of our community. We don't want you to help us. And that's not going to happen. So another example of this, going back to the newcomers, is I wanted to talk about a story that I heard from Ben Winchester, which was, the same 10 people, those people who tell, that run everything in town or think they do, and that are on every board and they do every committee, were complaining that new people to town would not volunteer. They wouldn't help out on their same way. And Ben talked to those newcomers and he said, "So what are you doing?" They're like, "Oh, we're spending a lot of free time on this kayaking group because there's great kayaking around here." So they don't want to be part of like that old stuff that you've been doing. They may want to do different things. But if you remember what your big goal is about building a better community. So a kayaking group is just as valid as that old thing that had been done for a long time before. So you have to recognize that people may be interested in different things than what you were thinking, especially newcomers. So, okay, I want to talk about a little bit about identity and changing how people see themselves, because I think this is another extremely important point about how we change the way people are involved in our community. And it has to do with identity. How do you see yourself? So how you see yourself determines what you're going to do. So you see yourself as a certain kind of person, and that's the kind of things that you do. You see yourself as a kayaker, so you kayak. You see yourself as somebody that's involved in downtown, and so you're hanging lights and trees. So there's a nice little piece of research that showed, and I read about it in the book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, where they said that, if you see yourself as an involved civic kind of person, you'll do involved civic kind of things. And the research showed what they did is they approached a group of people and they asked them if they would put a little bitty sign in their window that says that we care about our community, like we love Alva, or we love Webster City, or we love, anywhere that you're from. So they started with that. And so if you'll put that little bitty sign in your window, then if we come back in a few weeks and we say, "Hey, we have this huge, ugly yard sign that we want you to put up that says, something, another civic message," the people that had done the little bitty sign in their window said yes at a hugely higher rate than people who had not even been asked to put a sign in their window. That little bitty step they did of putting a little bitty sign changed their view of who they were. They started thinking of themselves as being involved in the community. So they were much more likely to say yes to something larger when they had done something small that enforced that identity of who they are. I'm involved in my community and I matter. So if we can get people to do those little bitty steps, thinking about that participation curve, the small but meaningful roles by everyone. So if we give you a small but meaningful role, click like on this, it helps us out. Click share, it helps us reach more people. You're involved in the community and you matter. When we do that and help them see themselves in a new way, then they're more likely to say yes to larger things down the road. So this is part of, if we can get people to start with something small, then we're going to be able to do more. And it goes back to that quote that we paraphrase from Carol Coletta all the time that says that what you believe about the future of your community determines your role in it, and so what you think about yourself, what you think about your role determines the actions that you're going to take. And that's what actually makes your community, is the actions that all of us take. So Deb, you've got a story that goes with this.
Yep, I do. So I was in Akron, Iowa. I did an embedded community experience there, and I visited a lot of small brick and mortar business owners. And I really asked them, like, what's working for you and what would you like to see in your town? Many answered that they liked living in a place where people knew them and their kids went to a good school, and that they liked that they were able to be supportive of the community, by doing things like donating to After Prom and selling Little League coupon books and offering space in their store for kids to do fun things like sell their own handmade products. I pointed out that these things matter, that they are small but meaningful ways to participate in your community. Are you letting groups hang up posters for events in your windows? That matters. Many store owners work long hours in the store and at home doing paperwork. Often they can't attend events and activities, but they can support them in these small and meaningful ways.
Deb, what I really love about that is that by pointing out to them what they are already doing, then you are helping them to see themselves differently. They're making that identity shift by seeing themselves, oh, I really am involved in helping this community. And that makes it easier to get them to say yes to even another little small thing. And the book that I mentioned was Switch, like light switch, by Chip and Dan Heath. And that's just one of many books. That story actually goes around. It's lots of places, gets used lots of places because it was a great example of how people see themselves. And it's also a good book. This book, Switch, is very helpful about seeing how we can help people change their behaviors. So it's a good book to read if you're thinking about how we can change some behaviors. Now, Mary Behrens has a good thought here. She says, in Dysart, Iowa, we have no chamber. We have no tourism center. All of our activities are volunteer generated. Some aspects still require difficult tasks like grant writing, which that's larger and more complex. I get it. Still, most only want to be involved in the fun stuff. That's true. That's that participation curve, isn't it? So how, without being too overbearing, do we ask people to step up and help with the other more tedious tasks? And that's a great question, Mary. And so if you think about that participation curve, it's by starting people on the little stuff and then helping them see how they can be involved. And the other thing is on grant writing, there are lots of pieces to grant writing, especially. It's a large project, but it's something that you can break up. And so you have one person that's great at writing, or you have somebody that's great at organization, or somebody that's really great with photos, and somebody that knows people, and somebody that's maybe, got time to read over it. And so you break that up into smaller pieces and you let one person kind of play the point person on that. But it's also a matter of recognizing, how can we do this in such a way that also there's some fun to it, because grant writing, I've done grant writing, it can actually be fun. Deb's like going, hey, I wanted to answer this.
Well, when we did our project to save our local movie theater, we had to write a business plan, and literally somebody took this piece, and we got a volunteer to do this piece, and we farmed it all out. It was great. And then as a group, we came back together to go through it. But the hard, heavy lifting was done by volunteers.
Yeah.
And ask people, reach out to your school teachers, reach out to people that are in education. They're great to help with grant writing, but not the entire thing. They can give their input and tell you what they want to work on.
And then it goes back to what we talked about before of making sure that people are aware of what those other pieces are. So rather than just you are the only one who takes on that harder piece, and you're all by yourself locked in your office having to work away on it. You have to talk about online what those other parts are that people can help with. And so then also when you're doing the fun stuff together, you have to say to people in person, we also have this. So if you could take on some part of this, is there some part of this that you could do? Who do you know who could also help with this other thing? So you have to know what your pieces are that are harder to do, talk about them with the people who show up for the fun stuff, and also talk about them online so people are aware that those other pieces exist and what ways, especially small ways, they can be part of it to make those harder pieces happen. How about that? Okay. I'm going to tell my other second story first. We're running out of time. So if you have other points, other questions, be sure to throw those into the chat box. We will be glad to address them. We'll even stay late because that's the kind of people that we are. So anything else that you want to throw in, feel free to throw that in as well. We will be glad to try to address as many of these as we can. I've got another story that I want to tell here, kind of as our wrap up, as I'm waiting to see if there's any more questions come up, but it's about limited resources, because sometimes I hear this, we're a small town. We're only a small town. We have limited resources. We cannot afford to do everybody's ideas. We can't afford to do all these crazy things. So what's the solution there? How do we balance that back out? So I think that limited resources are exactly why you have to do things in an idea-friendly method, because, you know, we cannot guess. None of us is expert enough to guess which ideas are going to work. And you know, we can't afford to spend all of our resources doing a lot of research trying to pick the one best idea before we even try anything. So what we can do, and realizing that even professionals get those kind of guesses wrong all the time, what we can do is we can empower everyone to do a tiny step and a tiny version of their own idea. So what you want to do is you want to turn back to those people, like Deb was saying, that's a great idea. What do you need to test it? Like, what's the tiniest version of your idea we can run a test on to see if it's going to work? We can do a lot of those little tiny tests by lots of people to find out what will actually work in our town, instead of trying to do a lot of research or having a lot of discussions or spending months at a time trying to pick the one best thing, because we don't have the resources to pull all that off. We do have the resources to do itty bitty tiny tries, little bitty experiments, and see what's actually going to work for us. So rather than enforcing on people, okay, you didn't follow up, well, then that means that idea is not going to happen. So if you didn't follow up and your thing didn't happen, it didn't happen. So then we'll go back and work on the ones that did happen and that they did work well. We can funnel our resources into the ones that are more proven because we did a test. We tried it out in our community. So you have to remember, you know, you're building a stronger community is your goal. Then the goal is not about investigating or proving or telling people not to do things. Our goal is about building community. So we waste a lot of resources trying to round up people and get them to do the thing that we told them, or to promise to do things that they're not very excited about. And what if we just didn't make those things happen? And then we focused on doing the things people really are excited about, things that really motivate people. If we cut away all that other junk, then we can focus on doing the stuff that's fun, the stuff that people are excited about doing, and let go of some of those things that aren't as much fun and don't really matter. It sounds a little crazy, but it's very idea friendly. So, all right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is it, man. We're down to the last call for your questions or stories there in the chat box, where we still welcome them. I know we'll stay late, we promise, but we want to review that one main idea, which is you want more volunteers, you need less formal organization and less formal structure you force on people. So now you'll find the recorded lesson that goes with this, and the recording of this Q&A is going to appear also on that replay page, and the link to that is in all of your email confirmations, so you can find it easily. And if you would like access to this recording even after the 2-week window is up, you can become one of our Megaphone members. A lot of you here today are Megaphone members as well. And that you can find at savior.town/megaphone membership. And I will copy that link and throw it into the chat box for you.
And Becky, while you're doing that, I'm going to thank our partners again.
I think that's great.
Because they're wonderful and we love them. Missouri Community Betterment, Dakota Resources, Oklahoma State University Extension, Association of Washington Cities, North Dakota Department of Commerce Tourism Division, Michigan Rural Council, Iowa Small Business Development Centers, American Independent Business Alliance, Glenn Muskie Consulting, West Central Initiative of Minnesota, Tourism Currents, Startup Asotin and Startup Whitman, the Center for Rural Affairs, and let's not forget our cooperating groups. The Oklahoma Main Street communities earn quality assurance points just by participating. And Wisconsin's Economic Development Corporation and University Extension, they help us get the word out.
Excellent. Thank you all. A big shout out again to all of our partners and groups that work with us, because we appreciate all of your extended reach that help more people benefit from these ideas. And thank you everybody that showed up live. We're excited to have you a part of this with us today. We're glad to build community together. Thank you for your participation. The great discussion. We had wonderful questions this time. We really appreciate it. And we'll be trying something new the next time that we see you live. We're going to be trying to make more of an open discussion and maybe turn it even into a podcast. So the next time you see us live, it may be a lot more innovative. We're always telling you to try new things. We're going to try something new as well. So thank you all very much today. We appreciate having you with us.
I'm Deb Brown from Iowa. Thank you.
And I am Becky McRae from Oklahoma. Bye now.